The last thing I expected that Friday evening was for a game of pool to change the way I saw my life. But when the black 8-ball rolled slowly toward the corner pocket, everything inside me seemed to stop. Across the table, my coworker Emma stood with her arms folded, watching the ball with a nervous smile. She had made a ridiculous little bet before the shot, one neither of us thought would matter. If she sank it, I owed her a kiss. If she missed, we would laugh, finish our drinks, and go home like always. But as the 8-ball disappeared into the pocket with a soft click, Emma didn't celebrate. She simply looked at me, and for the first time, I realized that the game had never really been about pool. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the possibility that one small moment can change someone's life, please like this story, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more heart-touching stories. I had worked with Emma for almost 2 years. We sat only 3 desks apart in a small accounting firm where everyone knew everyone else's coffee order, weekend plans, and favorite complaints about management. Emma was the kind of person who could walk into a room carrying 10 problems and somehow make everyone else feel lighter. She remembered birthdays, brought extra pastries on Mondays, and once spent her entire lunch break helping the elderly security guard fill out an online medical form because he didn't understand computers. I admired her, but I never told her. There were things you kept to yourself when you were afraid of losing what you already had. I had become especially careful about relationships after my last one ended badly. My fiancé had left me 6 months before our wedding, taking most of the furniture, the apartment deposit, and whatever confidence I had left with her. She told me I was dependable but emotionally distant. The words stayed with me. I started believing that maybe she was right. So I buried myself in work. I stopped dating. I stopped making plans. I became the person who answered emails late at night and spent weekends repairing things around my small apartment simply because there was nothing else to do. Emma noticed. She never pushed me about it, though. Instead, she found small ways to pull me back into life. She convinced me to join Coworkers for lunch instead of eating at my desk. She sent me ridiculous videos when she knew I was having a bad day. Once, when I mentioned that my father had been in the hospital, she quietly left a bag of groceries outside my apartment door because she knew I had forgotten to shop. She didn't ask for anything in return. That was what made her dangerous to my carefully protected heart. That Friday, after everyone else had gone home, Emma appeared beside my desk holding 2 jackets and wearing the mischievous expression I had learned to recognize. She said we were going to a pool hall down the street. I tried to make an excuse, but she refused to accept it. She told me I had spent enough Fridays hiding behind spreadsheets and that tonight I was going to do something reckless. The pool hall was old and warm, with yellow lights hanging above worn green tables. Music played quietly from an ancient jukebox, and the place smelled like chalk, fried food, and polished wood. We ordered sodas and started playing. Emma was terrible at first. She missed easy shots, scratched twice, and blamed the table every time the cue ball rolled somewhere unexpected. I laughed harder that night than I had in months. Then she started getting better. By the 3rd game, she was sinking shots with surprising confidence. She leaned over the table, carefully lined up the cue, and looked at me with a smile that made me forget what I was supposed to be doing. She teased me about being too serious. I teased her about pretending she didn't know how to play. Slowly, the conversation changed. We talked about childhood dreams, embarrassing school memories, places we wanted to visit, and the people we had lost. Emma eventually told me why she hated going home early on Fridays. Her mother had passed away the previous year, and Friday nights had always been their movie night. After her mother died, the apartment became unbearably quiet. Emma started staying late at work because silence hurt more than exhaustion. I had never known. For the first time, I understood why she always found reasons to keep people around. She wasn't simply outgoing. She was lonely. I told her about my broken engagement. I admitted that I had spent months pretending I didn't care because it was easier than admitting I was terrified of being abandoned again. Emma listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached across the table and gently tapped my hand with 2 fingers. Neither of us joked for a while. Then she broke the silence by pointing at the 8-ball. She said she had one final shot. If she sank it, I owed her a kiss. I laughed because I assumed she was kidding. She wasn't. She placed the cue ball carefully, bent over the table, and took a slow breath. I watched her eyes, not the ball. She looked nervous now, and suddenly I realized that the challenge wasn't really playful anymore. She wasn't trying to win a bet. She was asking me to take one small risk. The cue struck the ball. The 8-ball rolled slowly across the green felt. For one terrible second, it looked like it would miss. Then it kissed the edge of the cushion, changed direction, and disappeared into the corner pocket. Emma stood still. I stood still. The noise of the pool hall seemed to fade into the background. She looked at me, and her smile disappeared. There was no teasing now. Only vulnerability. I could have laughed it off. I could have reminded her that it was only a joke. I could have paid the imaginary debt with a quick kiss and pretended nothing had changed. Instead, I asked her if she was sure. She nodded. So I stepped closer. The kiss was gentle, brief, and almost painfully sincere. It wasn't dramatic. There were no fireworks, no music swelling at exactly the right moment. Just 2 lonely people standing beneath a yellow pool hall light, finally admitting what they had both been too afraid to say. When we pulled apart, Emma's eyes were wet. She told me she hadn't challenged me because she wanted to win. She had challenged me because she was tired of waiting for me to realize that someone could choose me without asking me to become someone else first. That sentence broke something open inside me. I realized how much of my life I had spent preparing for people to leave. I had mistaken emotional distance for strength. I had convinced myself that if I never needed anyone, nobody could hurt me. But Emma had shown me that a guarded heart doesn't avoid pain. It only avoids happiness too. We walked home separately that night, but something had changed. The next morning, I found myself staring at my phone for several minutes before finally sending her a message. I told her I wanted to see her again, not as a coworker, not because of a silly bet, but because I wanted to know what might happen if we stopped being afraid. She replied almost immediately. She said she was willing to find out. Our relationship didn't become perfect overnight. We still had awkward moments. I still struggled to open up. Sometimes I withdrew when things became too emotional, and Emma sometimes became quiet when she feared being abandoned. But instead of running, we learned to talk. Months later, we returned to the same pool hall. This time, Emma was much better than me. She broke the rack, sank 3 balls in a row, and laughed when I complained that she had been practicing without telling me. Then she pointed toward the 8-ball. I told her I wasn't making another ridiculous bet. She smiled and said she didn't need one. She simply wanted me to know that some games are worth losing because they lead you somewhere you were too afraid to go alone. A year after that first Friday night, we stood in the same little pool hall celebrating our anniversary. The table was still scratched. The jukebox still sounded terrible. The lights still flickered above us. But we were different. Emma had learned that being alone didn't mean being forgotten. I had learned that being vulnerable didn't mean being weak. And together, we had discovered something neither of us expected. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with a grand gesture. Sometimes it arrives disguised as a silly challenge, a nervous smile, and one impossible pool shot. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these stories reach someone who may need the reminder that they deserve a second chance at happiness too. And before you go, comment, "I believe in second chances," if you've ever taken a risk on someone, or if you hope that someday someone will take a risk on you. Because sometimes, the moment that changes your life isn't the moment you win. Sometimes, it's the moment you finally stop being afraid to lose.